Hello and a warm welcome to India's World. I'm Neelu Vyas. India and Germany have shared decades of healthy ties, but in the context of ongoing flux in global affairs because of uncertainties surrounding US policies and some Chinese initiatives that look like a new avatar of imperialism, Indo-German ties are very important for each other. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier was on a 5-day visit to India to boost the strategic and economic ties. What were the outcomes of this visit and where do the Indo-German ties move on from here? Joining me now are some credible voices. TCA Rangachari, former ambassador to Germany. Next to him is A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director, Business Standard. Professor Gulshan Suchdeva, he's the Director, Europe Area Studies, JNU. I welcome all of you on the program. My first question to you, Mr. Rangachari, is that let's explain to the viewers why India really needs Germany at this point of time.
Well, I think, well, there are many ways in which one can look upon it. Purely in geographic terms, Germany is the largest country in the European continent. We are the largest in South Asia. But that's a superficial way. But still, that's one way in which one could explain this. But more importantly, I think the historical experience that Germany has had, the historical experience that we have had, the pain and suffering that Germany has undergone, as we have undergone, the common goal of trying to raise the living standards of our people after having for a long time been more or less a devastated economy, specifically in the case of Germany because of the war and India because of colonialism. And above all, I think there is a great synergy in terms of value systems.
Okay.
One of the things that we in India need to be aware of is that the discovery of India as a great civilization, this was something which Britain as a colonial power had tried to play down and made out as if the Indians are totally uncivilized and they have no norms, etc. and so on. It was the discovery of Indian civilization by German scholars, and there are any number of them,
right,
which then in the 19th century, in the 20th century, reawakened the confidence in India in their self-belief. And that is one of the factors which propelled the national movement forward.
Right.
Today's situation, Germany, India, we are both countries which have a role to play globally. There are many challenges now. Some of them the President Steinmeier referred to in his address yesterday at Delhi University. And given the kind of role, location,
right,
and kind of strength that we bring on our own, we have a role to play globally if we can do it together.
Right.
Then it is that much better. As the President said yesterday, peace is ensured when we work together.
Right.
So there are many ways in which one can look at it, and if you start going into detail,
right,
I think as Professor Suchdeva will tell you, it's probably subject of many PhDs, not just one PhD.
Right. Okay, Mr. Bhattacharya, just tell us, there are a lot of expectations out of this visit in terms of the economic ties. Now, given the fact that President Steinmeier comes after Angela Merkel has been re-elected to Germany for the 4th term. So in terms of deliverables, how would you look at his trip?
There are quite a few deliverables actually.
Okay.
First, let me set the economic context of India and Germany.
Right.
Germany has got India's 7th largest foreign direct investor in India right now.
Right.
Got a 3% share in total India's FDI. Even in terms of trade, bilateral trade, Germany accounts for 3% of India's bilateral trade.
Right.
And we have a trade deficit with them. I mean, which country doesn't have a trade deficit with Germany? So that's par for the course in that sense. But the big issue that will probably people, experts, observers would like to look forward to from this visit is to what extent the famed the SME sector of Germany,
right,
they call Mittelstand.
Mittelstand.
Now, how they actually are galvanized into contributing to India's Make in India program.
Right.
You already have got a scheme going.
Right.
Around 76 Mittelstand companies have already tied into this Make in India scheme. 46 have begun operations here. Now they have the potential of creating jobs. They have the potential of getting new technologies, variety of sectors which
and
India
just
needs
to explain
investment.
it to the viewers, when you say Mittelstand companies, it's just an equivalent of the Indian
But
MSMEs,
not
right?
in terms of size. In terms of size, they are much larger.
Okay.
You know, I mean, normally there are about 1,400 or 1,600 German companies in India right now.
Right.
But then these are SME, not by Indian standards, or a 5 crore or a 50 crore company. They are, you know, into 1,000 crore, 2,000 crore
Right.
benchmark company. So they really have the wherewithal to transform Indian manufacturing if they are given the opportunity and the space here.
Right.
Now, the question mark that comes up with this Mittelstand vision coming true is India's stand on bilateral investment treaties.
Okay.
Now, India has taken a stand on bilateral investment treaty
Okay.
wherein it is insisting that an investor
Right.
has to first exhaust all domestic legal options
Okay.
before it can take a case to international arbitration.
Okay.
Now, this is a big worry point for not just for German companies, but for
for
a
other
large
countries
number
as
of
well.
developed countries. Now, Germany being a major player in India's Make in India program, I would say that India must do something by which these concerns are addressed.
Right.
And also remember, there are about 140 Indian companies which have opened shop in Germany.
Right.
So it's a two-way street. It's a thriving economic relations. But this bilateral investment treaty is something that everybody is looking forward to. How India can resolve this issue. And please remember that even this is becoming a bone of contention in India's proposed, comprehensive economic cooperation agreement with EU.
Okay.
Now, everybody is insisting that India must step down on this bilateral investment treaty condition. There are arguments in favor and against India's stand.
So you see this as one of the stumbling blocks
in strengthening this
when broad-basing of
relationship.
economic ties is concerned.
And there is no doubt Germany is an economic powerhouse,
Right.
and India stands to gain, just as Germany stands to gain because of the access to Indian market,
right.
and it's a growing, developing market.
Right.
So it's a win-win for both the countries. But coming in the way is a bilateral investment treaty, which needs to be really handled judiciously, maturely, and without any adverse impact on this growing relationship.
Okay. So you use
Two quick points on
Yes,
this.
Mr.
You know, one is that insofar as current global situation is concerned, it's important that countries like India and Germany speak up in terms of free trade,
right.
not sort of strengthen the forces of protectionism.
In
And the
fact, free
second
trade
thing
has
is
been
what-
on the anvil for quite some time, but we don't see it happening very soon.
But India and Germany are two countries which need to speak up
Right.
and indicate that they stand for free trade. That's and fair trade, of course. Second thing is that India and Germany can do a lot together in the innovation.
But what holds them back? When you talk about the free trade, what really holds back the two countries?
You know, free trade is
free
becoming
trade
a bigger
agreement which we are
challenge
talking
now,
about.
because the global environment is not in favor of free trade.
Okay.
I mean, you know, you just are going through a phase where the principle of most favored nation treatment has been abandoned
Right.
by the world's largest trading country, the US. You have a situation where even India has imposed some duties which can be called protectionist.
Right.
So I think globally, the breeze that blows in the world right now is not
very favorable for free
favorable to
trade.
free trade,
Okay.
which is not a very good sign.
Okay.
The Americans are doing what they are for free trade, and the Chinese are doing what they are against fair trade.
Fair trade, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
so the world is not a very nice place.
We'll come to the economic ties a little later, and let's dwell some time on President Steinmeier's visit. I'll come to you, Professor Suchdeva, on this. That this particular visit, if you talk about for the President of Germany, not many official announcements were made. And you know, we've just seen the visit happening, and we've also heard of the bilateral ties being spoken of. So how would you really encapsulate this whole visit without any official announcements? How does one read?
Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, so far this has been relatively low-key affair.
Right.
compared to, say, for example, just the recent visit of President Macron.
Right.
But one must understand that this is head of the state visit. The Chancellor Merkel was visiting, it would have been a different affair altogether.
Right.
But it's quite clear that Germany is the largest economy, and as mentioned earlier, I mean, it is an important trade and investment partner of India. So we are looking basically for investment. We are looking technology. We are looking their participation in our infrastructure projects and in renewable energy.
But if you talk about all these factors, don't
Yeah.
you think that this visit should have been hyped more?
No, in fact, I wouldn't say, because in fact, India-Germany relations, if you put in totality, they are more or less on autopilot anyway.
Okay.
So there are very strong institutional mechanism in place.
Okay.
You have intergovernmental consultations. You have different visits happening at different intervals.
Okay.
So I mean, this kind of visit is more of kind of further strengthening your ties, which already exist.
Okay.
So now, only thing which I think becomes much more important is the way things are happening within Germany and within Europe. In that context, now I think you mentioned, the new term of Chancellor Angela Merkel, and after that, this is his first visit after the new government which has taken place.
Right.
So now the way things are happening in Europe, now obviously Germany's position today is constrained by many factors. One is, now domestic politics is much more complicated today in Germany than it was, say, in the last 4 years.
Right.
Europe's situation is more complicated, slightly stable. At the same time, now transatlantic ties, trade ties, so all things are changing. So all have actually bearing not just on the German economy and the European economy, since Europe and Germany are also important trade and economic partner of India. So we also have to be very, very carefully watching what is happening there.
Right.
So now how Europe is going to move forward? You have a Brexit which is happening. You also have certain issues between American policies, its impact, both not just on economic policies but otherwise broader. But fact of the matter is that transatlantic alliance is still very, very strong. They're very much partner of Europe, and even the European integration project, despite all the challenges which has been facing for the last many years, there has been relative stability in the last at least 1 year or so. And German economy, it has been doing reasonably well in the last 2 years, and all projections are that even in the next 2 years, at least roughly about 2% growth will continue.
Right.
Refugee problem has been relatively, calm in the last couple of months. Now it's not like what it was in 2015, but as a result of 2015 problem in Europe, I think the politics in Germany and also in Europe has totally changed,
Right.
which was clearly mentioned by Angela Merkel in her first speech after taking over the new term.
Right.
So now the politics is very different, and how she is going to manage that politics within the new coalition, because now you have it's grand coalition. It's not just CDU and its Christian other party, smaller party in Bavaria, but I mean you have a new interior minister which is saying very
Right.
different kind of statements, particularly about Muslims in Germany and in Europe. And Angela Merkel is saying, since we have 4.5 million Muslims already in Germany, so they are very much part of German system. So all those kind of issues are going to affect Germany politics and German role in broader
Right.
European affairs, and of course our ties
Right.
with Europe.
We should also
yeah,
look at the
Ambassador, I was
personality
just
of the
coming to you.
president,
Right.
because he is a man who has grown in stature nationally. Here is a man who some years ago, last time when the elections were held, was the opponent,
Right.
leading the Social Democrats against Angela Merkel, the Christian Democrats, and lost badly. And yet now, in the course, particularly in the aftermath of the elections that were held last October, his popularity rating is the highest among all the politicians,
Right.
and touches almost 75%.
But
and lot of the German public today credits him for having succeeded in building this coalition between his own party, between the SPD and the CDU,
Right.
the Grand Coalition, which was more or less an automatic process the first time around when he became the foreign minister.
Right.
So I think his own personality and the fact that he's been in India earlier as in his capacity as foreign minister, all of this should count. And
Right.
therefore this visit, beyond whatever they may be in terms of actual content of agreement signed, etc. I think the voice that the weight that his voice would carry within the councils in Germany should also be a factor.
But search for coalition is what Professor Suchdeva was saying. Do you see any kind of similarity? Of course, not that our central government in India is doing so, but the kind of political narrative which is being built by the political parties, not singling out any, and the political framework in Germany, do you see any kind of a similarity as what is happening in India and what is happening in Germany right now?
Strictly speaking, constitutionally, possibly the similarities are not very apparent, because under the German constitution, it is absolutely necessary that you go through the process of political formation. The fear of the German constitution framers was that there should not be instability, because that is the kind of thing which gave rise to the forces which brought upon Second World War in Germany. So there are certain constitutional provisions which are not the same as far as India is concerned. But then, as far as coalition governments are concerned, I think we could learn a lot from Germany, in the sense that even if the political ideology of the political parties forming the coalition is very, very, in fact, even divergent, dramatically divergent, they make the effort in the national interest to kind of, put their ideology and party interests lower than the national interest. And in that sense, there is some lessons that we could learn from Germany, and hopefully that situation should not arise after the next election. But should it arise, then we should be looking at the German experience and seeing what it is that we can learn from them.
Okay, that's quite interesting insight which you have given. But coming to the most sticky issue, and that is of the Permanent Security Council. Professor Suchdeva, I would like to ask you that both Germany and India are part of the G4. Both are vying for the permanent seat in the Security Council. Now that they are close partners, they are trying to strengthen their strategic ties, economic ties. How do they really move forward, knowing that the P5 members do have certain reservations about India and Germany's entry into the Permanent Security Council?
Well, at one level, both of course want certain reforms in the UN system, and since both are looking for a membership in the UNSC, so in the past also they have worked together whenever it was possible. But I think both these countries are also quite realistic. They know the kind of difficulties they are going to face. But as and when there is any possibility of any kind of coalition building, they have worked very closely in the past. I think that should not be a problem. But I don't think they are really looking at this point of time any kind of permanent membership happening just in in any near future. Of course, they'll keep on working on this issue, but this issue is not really on the agenda, I think, as far as, both kind of support each other, but this is not going to happen. I think both know very well that this is not going to happen in a hurry. So this is not really the issue which is main at this point of time. Now the issue is about larger issues. I think you're talking about FTA, in India-EU FTA, and Germany has been for quite some time very vocal about this. So now, during this visit, I think nobody has talked much about this, because there is also a bit of a disappointment in Germany, because they were really looking, and Germany is also a country, they are not really a country of sound bites. They are looking for substance, they are looking for actual policy implementation. So when in fact, even when India-EU summit took place, when there was both sides, positive sentiments, positive kind of statements from the EU side as well as from India side. In fact, German ambassador gave his interview. He said actually there was very little agreement as far as India-EU FTA is concerned. So it means they were very realistic that, this is the thing which actually should have happened. They pushed for this. They are a bit disappointed. And, as was mentioned, they are also quite disappointed with all these investment treaties which we have, more than 20 or 22 investment treaties which we have kind of scrapped.
58.
No, they are with the European, out of that 22 are with the EU member states. So instead of actually having a trade and investment agreement with the European Union, kind of bilateral treaties we had actually, that has also gone. So that has actually to some extent, immediate, impact may not be seen. But I think in the long run, there are certain worries in European investors. And now, I mean, even the time is, of course, is changed, but in the last couple of years, you can see 3-4 years, India hasn't signed any trade agreement with any, because all the trade agreement which was signed, they were signed, 3-4 years back.
Right.
Now, one is that the government is quite cautious about this, because there is also certain negative, experience for some of the agreements, and the global situation has also changed.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that the EU and particularly Germany, they were expecting, very kind of movement on India-EU FTA,
So
which hasn't really
because
happened.
of the global headwinds, we have not been able to harness the actual economic potential between India and Germany.
No, I mean, see, the one is that, of course, I mean, it's not that only because of India-EU FTA will push everything else,
Right.
but that gives certain momentum to the
Right.
relationship. And Germany, being the largest economy and largest exporter, I mean, they were really hoping that this would happen soon,
Right.
but that hasn't happened. But of course, now they are moving into different directions. We are looking into, I mean, they're also important development partners, particularly in the renewable sector. I think Germany has,
Right.
a lot of kind of, help which can Indian renewable sector can hope for,
Right.
and in
In
many
fact,
other industries.
coming
I want to add to what
Yes.
the professor said. Germany is becoming even more important for two reasons.
Right.
One is you have to keep in mind the post-Brexit, the role of Germany will become even more important.
Right.
Mr. Macron had just come to India, and I think this issue once again figured that what happens to Europe post-Brexit. Now we are seeing that the visit of the German president, and I think India is also assessing the situation and keeping its powder dry in terms of what kind of Europe that emerges post-Brexit and what kind of equation it has. So it's very critical that we
Right.
need to have our relationship, economic relationship
Right.
with Germany as well as France.
And Germany also minces no words when it comes to
Absolutely.
relying on India. For
And
example,
the second point, very critical point of Germany is this, and this pertains to the negotiations on the FTA,
Right.
is because particularly the US is very closely looking at negotiations between India and Germany on FTA. There's a large number of US automobile investments are actually dependent on an early conclusion of this FTA with Germany.
Right.
Now, because otherwise access to the German market is not that easy. Now, I think the American automobile giants and even the Japanese they're actually keen to take
come and
advantage
invest in
of the Indian-German FTA
Right.
with the usual value addition norms being
Right.
put in and use that the German market. Germany, remember, is the world's fourth largest automotive market.
Right.
So therefore, it's a huge attractive market, and therefore the FTA becomes and assumes a certain critical importance.
Right.
Lest the viewer gets the impression that treaty provisions are somehow holding things back, we should also take note of the fact that the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce is the largest bilateral chamber of commerce that Germany has with any country.
right.
That's right, yeah.
And there are a large number of companies which have been here for 50 plus years.
Right.
And the German reinvestment of German companies operating in India is several times more than the fresh new German investments
Right.
coming in from Germany. The second thing is that there is a new market that is now opened up, and that is the film market.
Film market.
Kabhi Kushi Kabhi Gum was the first film which was actually carried on German TV,
Right.
dubbed in German. And since then, number of films have been shot in Germany, including, if you might recall, Dawn 2,
Dawn 2,
and
yes.
so on. Now, that's a very popular destination, which,
Right.
in terms of people-to-people exchanges,
Right.
is a huge bonus.
My question on the UN Security Council bid, like as he said that both the nations are not in a hurry, they might as well just wait, spend some more time in building the coalition and the framework. But what about the flexibility and the maneuverability? Will they not need that and then maybe take a few years to build it upon from here on, as far as the permanent seat in the Security Council is concerned?
Well, I think Professor Suchdeva put it very realistically and very correctly, that this is an issue that both sides have an agreement on, but also both know that the prospects of anything happening in making India and Germany a permanent member of the Security Council is not something that you should lose any sleep over.
Okay.
And relations are in any case developing very positively, constructively.
Right.
And some of the areas in which Germany has been in India is also connected with high tech. And that is an area that can be developed and is being developed.
Your final comments one by one about the outcomes of this visit, President Steinmeier's visit, your final thought?
Well, I think because of the fact that the post of a president in Germany is largely a ceremonial one,
okay,
we should not judge the success of this visit by the number of agreements signed or any concrete specific things that emerge out of it.
Okay.
More important is that he is a very respected figure in German politics. His counsel is heard by the Chancellor and others, and therefore his understanding of India at its current stage, and I think he gave some glimpse of it in yesterday's address at the Delhi University,
right,
and it's a very profound understanding of India. It's something that will stand us in very good stead.
Okay, Professor Bhattacharya?
I would agree with Mr. Rangachari. I think we should not judge it by the declaration that is made or a statement or agreement that is signed.
Okay.
But I think this will be an opportunity wherein the German side and the Indian side will be able to exchange notes on what needs to be done to cement the Indo-German economic relations, particularly address the concerns that have arisen out of the bilateral investment treaty. Please remember that even though this treaty is causing some concern, there has not been a very tangible impact on FDI from Germany into India. They continue to be made, and the German companies are fully committed to India. So it is all the more necessary that we need to make that gesture and understand their concerns and try to find a closure to this concern.
Okay, Professor Suchdeva.
And you know, as I think economic issues and foreign economic issues are becoming more and more important in our foreign policy.
Right.
So Europe, and within Europe, I think Germany will continue to be very important, and all these visit and all agreement, everything will facilitate that. Similarly, if you look at from the German side, I think for Germany, reforms within the European system, strong transatlantic alliance. At the same time, they are also focusing for the last 10 years on BRICS countries. So within that, definitely India is becoming more and more important for them. And how these both sides, I mean, so it means both are becoming important and giving more importance to each other. And as I earlier said, the relationship is already strong institutional basis, and how to move further. I think this visit will perhaps be one more.
With whatever is happening in around the world, it wouldn't be wrong to say that Germany is picking on Asia as its pivot for carving out the foreign policy, right? So remember when PM Modi visited Berlin last year, after signing the deals, he wrote that Berlin and India are made for each other. That same spirit of bonhomie and camaraderie continues, and India and Germany vow to hold each other's hands in the economic, strategic and the political journeys. On that note, I thank all my guests, Mr. Rangachari, Professor Bhattacharya and Professor Suchdeva. It was a pleasure talking to you. Goodbye and thanks for watching.